Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. William White, yes, one of the official scientists from the Midnight Society. I see again, you have awoken me, which means it is time to go Dogman hunting. Absolutely delicious. And thank you for releasing me from my shackles, Mr. White. Yet, without further ado, it is time for you and I to go Dogman hunting.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back once again to Midnight Lycanthropy and StarFox Radio. I see you have found your way into the darkness of the Fox Den to sit around the late night fire and burn some timber as we again try to figure out what is occurring. Yes, not just in North America, but globally. We do have one of my good friends and the official geologist and also is a scientist for the Midnight Society team, William White. How the heck are you doing, man?
Good. I'm back stateside, after a very long vacation to South America. It's different. Apparently we got a lot of snow while I was gone. It seems like we got it all across the United States. So I went from a pretty tropical, beautiful climate to classic North American winter. And, it's kind of fun.
That's funny you said that because being up here in Maine in the Northeast, we usually get hammered with snow. So, I mean, y'all can have that. I'm being sarcastic. But, yeah, Jody did say something about back-to-back storms where one of them was like 10 inches. I'm assuming you're back down in your Ohio stomping ground up in Pennsylvania. Yeah, so you're getting hit with that.
Yep. And then, I get back and my driveway's got at least 12 inches of snow in it. I have no idea where my snow shovel is because we haven't had heavy snow for several years. And so I go to the hardware store, several of them. They're sold out of snow shovels. They're sold out of square-nosed, digging gravel shovels. I had to buy basically a super expensive mulching shovel with a really. I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4", with a really short 2.5 foot long handle, and dug myself out with that. So.
Hey, you got it done. But I was just gonna say, you're that type of guy that likes to get in that exercise and that type of work, man. So I mean,
that's a positive spin.
Yeah, exactly. So you definitely got some work in. On a really funny note, certain areas that get hammered with snow, so like Buffalo and Minnesota, people are so loyal to their sports teams, but specifically football, that these players legit get to wake up and the community is shoveling them out to make sure that they get to their games and stuff. It's so awesome.
That sounds about right.
Green Bay's another one too. Yeah, these small little areas. So it's pretty funny. But all right, sweet. I'm glad you're doing pretty well. And to the audience, yes, tonight we have a very interesting case that it's well known if you are diving into the topic that we speak about, missing people, predator behaviorisms. But if you only lightly browse the surface of this type of stuff, you might not have heard of it. And I mean, I'm pretty heavily involved, and I only recently heard about this maybe a few years ago. It is a case that kind of gets overlooked, and we're going to dive into that tonight. Before I throw William the mic here, long story short is we had a healthy, younger, famous, I guess you could say, country singer by the name of Taylor Mitchell up in Canada. And from what I gather from everything I've dove into and tried to fact check and check on this is she supposedly was attacked and unalived in YouTube terms by a group, meaning two, coyotes that, well, weren't even technically in the area where she supposedly was attacked. And they didn't have any signs that they had human predation in them anywhere, meaning they weren't responsible more or less for that. But then there's also another spin, I think when I sent you the article, it might not have been that one, but one of them now is trying to spin that there might have been more coyotes, which I don't know. I do know from speaking to some of our science members that sure, the larger the pack of coyotes gets, the more aggressive they're going to be. 5 or 6 of them, yes. 2 of them that look well fed, I don't know. How do you feel about this, man?
Yeah, so I'm old enough that I was in college when this story happened. I was not interested in cryptozoology or anything weird like that at the time, but I do remember this popping up in the news and reading some internet articles about it. And if I recall, at least at the time when it first happened, there was speculation that it was like a pack of coyotes, as in several, not just 2, which kind of makes more sense to me. 2. That's really weird because I've lived across the country. I've said that before. In the Midwest and out here in the East, the coyotes get bigger because there's a lot more food and water and resources. They get bigger, but they're still not very large. I mean, you're talking like not even as big as your average Labrador Retriever, right? And out in the western states where it's more desert, they typically are significantly smaller. Now, I'm assuming Canada's similar to like the Midwest and the eastern United States as far as, having a larger amount of food and resources for the coyotes to get bigger. So, yeah, we're probably talking about, larger coyotes. But once again, two of them just boldly attacking a full-grown woman. She was 19 at the time. Women aren't as big as men, but they're still much bigger than coyotes. That's really strange. I have to assume there were extenuating circumstances and factors involved. And reading through the article and reading through some, like the Wikipedia, there's actually a Wikipedia article on it. It seems like a lot of speculation about why the coyotes may have attacked. They weren't. I don't believe they were caught and destroyed, so they couldn't test them for rabies. That's always an option. But the idea of 2 rabid coyotes working together, that's atypical too. Usually when an animal goes rabid, the other animals kind of stay away from it because they can sense that it's not right, and it's not behaving right. So yeah, it's a very strange case for sure.
Yeah, very well spoken right there. And it's just pretty bizarre, like you said, because obviously, depending on what certain individuals want out there to the general public, I don't know if you or I can really get any more information out of this unless we were potentially able to speak to, say, family members. But I'm assuming everything that's out there, and again, assumptions aren't good, but I'm just saying that their families probably put all the information that they were told as well. I don't know that her family would know anything else than that's out to the public. They were probably told the same thing. And it's confusing because, like I said, when I spoke to Nuxium, our master tracker, remember that instance down in Kentucky where the whole coyote massacre that's up on our website?
Yeah,
have you seen that? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Him and I were speaking about that a while ago, just trying to, get his opinion on things. And we were just trying to potentially suggest. My little brother had come on and he was like, hey, what if it's a mountain lion with her cubs, maybe because they stick together for a while? Could they have done all that to a pack of coyotes? It looked to be like, what, 6, 8, maybe a little bit more. There's some ripped apart. Would a black bear do that? And pretty much the answer to all of them, it's not worth it. Even if that was a black bear, if it came to push and shove and only one, either the black bear or those group of coyotes are leaving the area, sure, that, let's roll. But the black bear is going to have a lot of injuries after that from all those coyotes, because like Nixium was saying, when they bite, they just rip out part of your fur, and yuck. Same thing with the mountain lions and stuff. And there was no sign of that fur or anything around any area. More or less, it pretty much just showed that something came in there and destroyed all of them. Okay. Now looking at this case with her up there, they don't really say any other predators. But again, I'm a big advocate for saying predators don't have an area where they just stop. Okay. They don't just like stop and, hey, I came from Canada and this is Maine now. So yeah, there has to be cougars up there. Wolves,
this whole thing where like you'll see these, state DNR or whatever the different agencies are called in each state. A lot of these, our eastern states will say, yep, there's no mountain lions here. We have no mountain lions in Ohio, in Pennsylvania. And it's like, yeah, but, there's mountain lions a couple states over, and mountain lions don't understand borders. They don't say, oh, there's no mountain lions in Illinois, so I'm not going to cross the river and go into Illinois because, the DNR said there's no mountain. The predators go wherever they want to go. And, I mean, shoot, my sister and mother actually photographed what looks to be a mountain lion on their property here in Southwest Ohio. And, there's supposedly no mountain lions here. So, you say telling a predator saying, okay, I don't know about Nova Scotia where this attack happened, right? But saying there's no wolves in Nova Scotia. Well, I mean, if there's wolves in a neighboring province in Canada, they could easily, just on a whim or chasing game, maybe there's game was sparse, go to Nova Scotia or go wherever they're not supposed to be. I mean, that's silly to, when state agencies try to claim stuff like that.
Boom, you just hit it right on the head, because just recently as well, I was baffled and actually really surprised and thought it was super cool that these jaguars were seen up in Arizona. 8 of them, 9 of them, right? And
it's awesome because that was their old range, and they had been basically hunted to extinction out of the Arizona. And recently in the last couple decades, they've been coming back. Yeah, it's really cool.
Love how you just said that too, because that's legit the exact thing that Nixium said, and it's so awesome to see how common great minds think with certain things, because I was like, wow. And Nixium's like, well, it's not really that wow. That was their territory.
Yeah.
Any animal will come back and reclaim it eventually. So that, again, ties into what we're saying. People should just really not be so sold on that just because, hey, it's 3 states over, it's not here. Because same thing, when I was maybe 8-10 years ago heading to work, I saw a mountain lion cub get hit, okay? And up here, it's not acknowledged that they're up here, but there's trail cameras that people have that have been in like the Portland Press Herald, the Bangor Press Herald, etc. And I do know recently up on the East Coast, pretty close to us, there was a mountain lion that was a male that was tracked all the way from the Midwest, and he was picked up on different trail cams, etc., making its way over. And unfortunately, he was hit on the highway too. But that just shows you how far they're willing to, expand their area. Another great example too that I try to tell with people when they're like, all right, there's no wolves down in Tennessee and Kentucky besides potentially a red wolf. Well, right up in Michigan, you have timber wolves and gray wolves, right? Wolves go around 350 miles to just kind of scout things. That's their turf. And they'll feed anywhere from 35 miles and under near the den. You have this radius, right? And you got this male kind of going out and doing his thing. Why is it so far-fetched for people down in Tennessee to understand that you could have a large timber wolf just scouting out an area, but not necessarily chilling there?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, animals like, mountain lions and wolves, they are so good at not being seen when they don't want to be seen. I've lived out west in Idaho and Wyoming, those areas. They have wolves. And I've been out in the wilderness a lot. And guess what I've never seen in the wild? A wolf. And the reason why is because they're pretty shy. They don't want to be seen by humans. They're stealthy. They stay in the tall grass and in the tree line and stuff like that, where we're generally not going to see them. So yeah, you could have even a breeding population of wolves someplace and not know about it, simply because they don't want to be seen and spotted. They'll find some fairly quiet place, wooded area that has a lot of deer and other food they can eat, and they won't, be seen until they have to move someplace else and maybe get hit by a car or something. So
Yes, and that's just why it is interesting to think that on a logical level, there really could be some sort of other known predator involved here. But then on the other aspect, we could say, if they're saying they're not in this area, that's what I mean about it's really hard to figure out because, again, I guess her body was found in a pretty gruesome way with a lot of blood loss, but any predator for the most part will do that. Like I was just saying, coyotes or anything rip you apart for the most part.
They're going to rip your throat, out or other major arteries, they oftentimes go for like the genitals, there's a lot of blood flow there. It's a great way to make an animal bleed out, so yep.
Oh man, I hate that you say that because that just popped into my mind, but I've seen it so many times with, these big buffaloes in Africa, and man, the lions and hyenas just go right for their, how do I say this?
Yeah, their rump basically, and they'll tear tear out their
testicles,
rectum, or genitals if they're easily accessible. Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason for that. It's less defended. You don't have the big head with the horns in the case of like a buffalo, and there's a ton of blood that flows through there. So once you break an artery or a large vein down there, you just got to wait, and the animal eventually
they drop real quick too. Even that big bull.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah, and recently too as well. Just because we're on that topic, there is a pachyrhina. Is that what it's called? It's a relative of the piranha. It's actually a very large version, and it's got human-like teeth that are extremely sharp.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be here, but people, well, do what they got to do, which is why now there are Nile crocodiles in the Everglades. So
yeah, I was just reading about that.
Man, bro, so you got a war down there where there's no more prey food, okay? So now you have Nile crocodiles, alligators, and pythons just going gnarly at each other. And same thing with this. Someone put this fish in some Florida ponds, and they're there now. You know what they are known for? They are notorious called nut crushers because in the area where they're originally from, they have taken away numerous tribal members' manhood. Ouch.
Yeah, don't go skinny dipping,
Dude, that's just so brutal, brother. But again, that's what I mean about what we think is brutal. Nature's not really trying to play
they
like
don't
that.
care. Nature doesn't care.
No, man. What do you think really happened to Taylor here, man?
I don't know. Stuff like this, there have been, in the last, 10 years, there have been a few cases in Kentucky of young people who were, by some, unknown wild animal. And it's usually the local sheriff or whatever that, releases that. And then you don't, like we talked about the other night, I sometimes think the smaller local agencies don't have the 411 on how to respond to that stuff. And then you never hear about it again from anyone else. They never figure out what them. So yeah, when you hear about these weird of people in the wild, it could be the simple answer. Yeah, two weird coyotes that for whatever reason decided to attack a human, or maybe it's something else. Everyone has to acknowledge that behavior is very strange. Very strange indeed for two coyotes. If it were a pack, and they were hungry, absolutely. Coyotes historically have been known to try to go after small children at least. But a full-grown human is an intimidating thing. Even if I don't know how tall she was, but let's suppose she was something average, like 5'4". A 5'4" woman is going to stand significantly taller than a coyote and ought to be fairly intimidating.
Yes, and that is like what we've spoken about before, the whole risk reward, two coyotes right there, like you said, she's going to kick them in the face and things. I don't know. That's just a lot of risk unless you're starving, but it didn't really seem like they were starving. It again leaves the question as, are we being told the whole definitive truth of this? And when you dove into the area, I didn't really necessarily look on the maps and things. I do know that people don't realize Canada is massive, okay?
Yeah.
And there's a ton of forest up there as well. The
Oh,
area
yeah.
she had this happen, man, was it in a well enough inhabited area? Were people traveling the trail enough, or was she pretty remote?
So she was on what's called Skyline Trail, okay, and that's in the Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia. So she was in a national park, and if Canadian national parks are anything like American national parks, yeah, it's probably fairly remote. Now, a couple American tourists who were also hiking nearby actually heard her screams. So there were people around. It's not like she was the only person for 10 miles or something. So yeah, once again, kind of odd behavior. If there's a reasonable amount of humans within the area, you'd figure the coyotes would be pretty shy. And I'm thinking like a predator animal. Yeah, if there's a single human and I don't detect there's any other humans nearby, maybe it's an easy meal. But like I said, there was a couple close enough that they heard her scream.
Jeez.
So,
wow, that's pretty gnarly. And when you think about it, it's definitely something that, well, are coyotes potentially now starting to lose their fear of people because they have become so urbanized and they're seen in urban areas? They have mated with domesticated dogs, also red wolves in some areas.
yep.
I know for quite a long time you had people really heavily chasing them and hunting them, so it
Yep.
almost seemed like anytime that they saw a person, they became scared. But now, let's say they may be losing that a little bit, because isn't that how, when you breed, right? So if they are breeding, say, with something domesticated that doesn't have fear of people, that
There you go.
offspring starts to lose that, correct?
Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah, I know out west, a lot of the western states, where there's a lot of like cattle raising and sheep raising, a lot of places out west have bounties on coyotes because they won't go after a full-grown cow, or even probably, yeah, they'll in goats, even full-grown goats. But what they really like to go after are the young, especially after they're recently born and real weak.
Yes.
So that's bad for business. So either the state or the farmers will put up bounties on them, like $20 for coyote ears or something like that.
Jeez.
So out west, yeah, it's coyotes, in my experience, are a lot more skittish around people. They avoid humans because there's incentive for the average Joe with a gun to shoot a coyote if he sees it.
Yes.
In Canada, let's think about our neighbors to the north. They have guns too, but there's a lot less people just randomly carrying guns.
Per area, yep.
Right, and
Extremely
and
strict
there's
laws too, man.
right, and I don't honestly know a whole lot about Canada, but we're talking Nova Scotia, which is on the east coast of Canada. I doubt there's as much like farming, or not farming, excuse me, but cattle raising and sheep raising out there, just like our eastern states aren't as well known for that as our western states. I know there's a lot of that in the western Canada where it's like prairie and stuff. So maybe there hadn't been that pressure on the coyotes to learn to fear humans, or they would probably been off when in the early days. But as like we talked about, as they repopulate their old lands or come into areas that used to be populated by wolves or whatever, now they don't have that fear of man. And yeah, you're right. When coyotes are living in cities or suburbs and they're eating people's trash and people's dogs and cats and stuff like that, they're going to start to see humanity not as a threat, but as more of a source of food, So that could if it was really two coyotes, it could just be that they had been habituated to have no fear of humans and to view them as a source of food,
Yeah, that's very great stuff right there. And it makes me think of, the opportunistic aspect, like the Wile E. Coyote from Looney Tunes and stuff. Well, they're always Yeah, one of the more opportunistic animals, because like when you were mentioning with the farm animals waiting for offspring times, they do that with deer as well, and they'll decimate some of the deer populations because they wait for, breeding time and then go right up in there, which is
Yeah.
obviously smart and stuff. Opportunistic for sure. And I mean, you're a big guy. Like you said, you ripped off the side of, your camper to get to your kid. I'm pretty sure that you could fend off two coyotes and be pretty decent shape. I'm 6'1", like 158 at the moment. I could as well, but I'd probably have some more bites and scratches on me than I'd prefer. But yeah, I mean, she was 19 and she wasn't, anything big or such. She was just a, normal size kind of petite girl.
Yeah, to me, in this one picture I'm seeing of her, she looks fairly petite. She's got, a guitar in her hands, and the guitar looks pretty big compared to her. So, yeah, she might have been an easy target.
That's what I'm saying. If
Maybe
one of
she's
them
five
knocked
foot
her
two
down,
or 5 foot nothing.
yeah, and like you were saying, so one of them knocks her down, right? And they do have sharp teeth. So if she gets knocked down and one does get a quick bite on her neck or something, it doesn't really matter from there, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's all it takes. Well, that's the old adage. If you're in a fight, stay on your feet.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think even more so when you're dealing with animals. If
You
if
look
you're
bigger.
if you're fighting off an animal, you got to stay on your feet because once you're on your back, you're in their range for them to go after your most vulnerable areas, which that's your neck. You get a nasty cut, gash, bite on your neck, and there's a good chance it's going to punch either your jugular or your carotid, and then it's pretty much over. So
Like you said, and then once one of them gets her down and the other one does get on, if we're going to roll with the two theory, yeah,
mhm.
I mean, could be pretty messy. And actually, as you had said, Nova Scotia, I mean, I can't verify anything outside of the suburban area I went to, but in high school, I actually went up there and played soccer because
Mhm.
long story short, was never into soccer, man. I was a super elite goalie, didn't care, wanted to play hockey, never got a chance to seriously play hockey. Parents were not about that or football. So yeah, I had to play soccer. Put no effort in, was super good, whatever. And we got to travel around. And yeah, I went out to Nova Scotia and we basically stayed with another team up there that was participating in the tournament. Basically, we stayed with their families and stuff. And Nova Scotia, the area we were in, reminded me a lot of like a Portland, Maine. I don't know if you ever been up there or
I
a
need to, but I haven't been.
yeah, so it had a feel where down by the docks they had like these little get-togethers pretty much like every night, like these little like stands where people were cooking like pretzels and things. And but then you had like the more suburban type area outside of that, but then the city part too. When we went up there on the boat, there was a lot of forest and land we were traveling by.
Mhm.
That just happened to ring up into my head for sure.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, basically outside of the cities in Canada, it's pretty much just wilderness. It's like you said, it's a huge area of land with a relatively small population. I think it's around 40 million now, and I think like 90% of that population is within 100 miles of the U.S. border. So yeah, much of it is just vast wilderness. Still to this day.
Yeah, it's great stuff, when you mention that, because same thing with Maine. A lot of people don't realize over 90% of Maine's population is in southern Maine. Once you
Hmm.
hit a spot that's more than halfway, so we're talking about like 30% of Maine. There we go. So 70%, once you hit that mark, it's just like straight up trees, and the number drops down drastically of inhabitants and such. And we are the most forested state per capita in the whole United States. And just think of other areas like Washington and
Yep,
Oregon. Yeah, we have more trees than that. We got more trees than people up here.
for sure. Yep, pretty cool. I love that type of environment. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if this was a pretty, relatively desolate area. Nonetheless, it is just a strange case. I've never, when I go out in the woods and carry a gun, it's because I'm thinking about bear, black bear, big cats, cryptids. I'm not concerned or actually, the reality is most of the time I'm concerned about, some big aggressive dog, but I'm not concerned about coyotes. That doesn't hardly even cross my mind, because to me, they're going to be way more afraid of me than I am of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Great stuff right there too. And how do you feel potentially, I mean, about wolves? Because obviously there's different variants. Wolves are hunted, but also
Hmm.
wolves, well, had to overcome their fear at one point in time with our ancestors that
Oh
probably
yeah,
not necessarily hunted them, but there had to have been violent altercations where we pushed them out of areas, but they
yeah, yeah.
still came around to befriend us. So again, I don't know this, which is why I'm asking you, but wolves must have a pretty minimal fear of humans overall, huh?
I think overall, especially when they're not being hunted actively by us, more than likely, you're right. Um, actually, speaking of Canada, speaking of wolves, this century, I don't remember the year, but there was actually the only verifiable wolf, of a human in probably 100 years. Uh, Happened in Canada. I think he was like might have been a geologist or some sort of a Forest Service type guy, and he got chased by wolves and torn
Brutal.
apart. But yeah, wolves obviously at some point, some of them decided that people weren't so bad and hung around us, and we tossed food to them, and came to an agreement and turned them into dogs. Nonetheless, especially European wolves are famous for being, man back in the old days, and North American wolves certainly at times have been a threat to humans. Um, so yeah, wolves I would respect, especially if they're in a pack, and they're big. People don't realize how big wolves are.
Huge.
Imagine the biggest dog you've seen, say maybe a Great Dane, and they're right around that size a lot of times, especially the big Canadian gray wolf, timber wolf types. They are huge. Their heads are significantly bigger than dog heads, which then means they have significantly more powerful jaws because the muscles for the jaws wrap around the back of the head. So you can always that's why pit bulls have such crazy bites. They've got those big, massive heads. Um, so yeah, you can always tell an animal's bite strength by basically the size of its head. Um, yeah, I would respect wolves, if I ever came across them in the woods, because generally they're not going to be a problem. But if they decide to be a problem, they could be a real problem.
Yes, that is some gnarly stuff. And I mean, that's like with the hyena, like you said, those
Yeah,
big heads. And wolves in general have a huge PSI bite. So, and they
yeah,
don't
they
even
do.
necessarily have those huge jowler type muscles, like you're saying, on the side, like a pit bull's head or something, or even a hyena's head looks a little bit more sturdy. I know it is. I've seen hyena skulls in comparison to wolf skulls. And actually, Meiku, a member of our science team, pointed out something so cool is that canine skulls, for the most part, are usually pretty brittle, and when you actually see skulls that have been tattooed onto people, they're actually using raccoon skulls because it looks more of what a canine skull, when people think of
Should
it,
look
would
like.
look like. Yes, pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty gnarly stuff. And do you think it was pretty much just then an anomaly that we befriended some of these wolves? Do you think, obviously we weren't there, but maybe they were the ones that were kicked up out of their tribe and they
Man,
were pack and hungry? I mean, was it just pretty
it's
much luck?
our evolution together with dogs is so crazy. You know, um, dogs actually have an innate instinct to look where we look. Like they can tell where we are looking, and then they will look at that spot. And I've had that happen with a couple dogs I've owned, and that's something that was like somehow bred into them or evolved into them as they lived alongside us because that became useful as we were using them to hunt or to protect against threats and stuff. I mean, the random chance that we would have this funny relationship with this other predator is, and that it would become such a close bond, it to me it's almost more than just random chance. It's like it was meant to be, the gods, God, the universe, destiny, whatever put us all together. It is such a crazy thing when you think about it. Just how intertwined our lives have been forever, and not just in like Europe or the Middle East or the cradle of humanity or whatever you want to call it. I mean, when we when the Europeans came to the New World, the Native Americans were using dogs. They had a bond with dogs. Dogs were an important part of their lives too. Which goes to show you that when they crossed the Bering Land Bridge, 50,000 years ago or whenever it was supposed to be, they probably brought dogs with them. Asians, Africans, everyone. Well, there were no native dogs to Australia. Well, the dingoes were the result of like European dogs going wild and mixing and something to that effect. Yeah,
and they're that badass. Ooh, that's scary.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it is just so crazy that virtually every single population across the world that had access to canines developed a bond with them and used them, and for the same things, protecting their flocks, protecting their homes, hunting, and even companionship. It is just a wild thing. And it's not like it's a cow, it's not like it's a grass eater, it's a predator, and we use them to protect our babies, and stuff like that.
Right.
So.
That's what I'm saying, because we don't have any little small bears running around,
Right.
We don't have any small little badgers or wolverines, but we have, yes, dogs that come from wolves, which is so interesting and so cool. And as we do start to wrap this up, that made me wonder, how did cats come around like that then? Because obviously the household cat is related to, as far as I know, just like you said, large cats with a lineage such as wolves. Someone must have domesticated something.
So from what I understand, there were small predatory cats in the wild, and it was, some people think it was the Egyptians, but some culture at one point realized, hey, these things aren't a problem. They mice and rats, and mice and rats eat the food that we harvest. Eat the grain that we store in the wintertime. And, when we have these cats around, we don't have a problem with mice and rats. And it was, and so someone, went out of their way to kind of gain their confidence and their trust. And then, you breed the cats that are more friendly to humans and keep those. And you just keep doing that until you have this weird little arrogant animal that pretends like you don't exist unless it wants love.
Man, that is so awesome, and I love how you just said that, because I do believe actually it did have the development in Egypt, like you said too. And yeah, it's just so funny because in all the memes and images where you see like a snooty looking Egyptian pharaoh cat or something, it's just pretty much really how they act. I love cats. Cats are cool, but like you said, they only pop around or come say hi to you when they want to, whereas your dog will always be there to say what's
you'll
up.
Call your dog and he'll be like, yeah, okay, sure I'm here.
Yeah,
you call your cat, the cat doesn't care.
No. If you walk into which room it's where it's chilling, yeah, sure, you can pet it, but like you said, it's not going to run down the stairs for you unless it's like feeding time or something. So
exactly.
That would make a ton of sense, because I was thinking to myself, how the heck did anyone befriend a lion or a tiger to turn this into a pet? Because, man,
no, I don't think we turned some big cat into a small cat. I think it's like there's like the Cerva cats and I think they're from South America, and there's small wild cats all over the world, and it must have been something like that was a little less of a threat to us, but was a huge threat to mice and rats.
That's awesome, because, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the only acknowledged active, meaning that they like to hunt humans, are tigers and saltwater crocodiles.
And polar bears. All three of those apparently will hunt humans, not by accident or to defend, their territory or their young, but directly for food,
Jeez, I'm croak. And the reason I know that is I like to learn, but obviously learning about stuff like that is pretty gnarly. But over in India, they have a ton of issues, and there's points in time where these tigers, yes, this kitty likes to swim, and it will go in and just grab people that are sleeping out of their canoes and be so stealthy about it that one guy woke up and he had a group of 4 or 5 people with him, and he was literally the last one in the canoe because this tiger just kept coming back and snagging them. And they try everything from putting on a mask backwards, meaning like it looks as if you're staring at the predator, because even great white sharks don't come at you usually from the front, it's from the back and also the bottom. But that really doesn't seem to work too well.
Yeah. No, I mean, tigers are, once again, we're talking about size difference, Tigers like 600-700 pounds.
Whew.
And I think from nose to tip of tail, it can be close to 10 feet long. And they're big animals and much bigger than a human. So it doesn't necessarily view us as anything of a threat. So why would it care if you're looking at it? He's just going to get you anyway,
And the scariest thing about felines is, they only have a stored amount of energy. So, I mean, a tiger is usually only active like 3, maybe 4 hours a day, they were saying, does a lot of sleeping. It doesn't really necessarily have a ton of energy to burn out. But, I mean, you've seen house cats, they just spaz out sometimes. And you're like, holy crap. Now picture something like you just said, this massive tiger that does have, that capability to use that explosive energy, extremely agile. Dude, no person, until we got modern day weapons, that would have been brutal trying to defend off a tiger with spears and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been terrifying, It's got all the advantage. So, yeah, until the advent of gunpowder, it was still kind of almost a fair fight with Mother Nature,
Yeah, right. Like you were saying. I mean, same thing with like a grizzly bear, because I mean, there's actually 2 great movies before we let you go that have depictions that of pretty scary animal interactions. You got The Edge with Anthony Hopkins, where one of the people that gets wounded cutting himself trying to carve a spear. Well, they're tracked down by this massive grizzly bear, and it just grabs the guy by the leg, and you just realize how much of a rag doll you would be in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then the same thing with Liam Neeson in The Gray, with the wolves in that movie, where they're picking off the people that have crashed in the airplane. And like you were just saying, where they chase down that scientist, and then you got the super PACs in Russia where there's like 300, 400 of them. Imagine just seeing 5 wolves run at you, okay? And now times that by like 20, 30, 300, dude. Like, that's brutal.
Yep. It's wild. And I've heard of those super PACs, at different, random times, probably when the caribou or whatever big animal they hunt is no longer in the area. Yeah, they'll like charge into towns and villages, and everyone's got to lock themselves indoors, or else bad things could happen. So
That's gnarly, man, and that's got to tie into some of those old school like raging werewolf lores. And I actually
Probably.
spoke to, it has to. I spoke to a couple of people over there, and what they were saying happens sometimes is with the massive freezes, a lot of the smaller game animals that these wolves tend to rely on, like rabbits and things, will immediately freeze and just be wiped out. Instead of battling each other, these wolves are smart enough to basically team up and then realize, well, we can take out the livestock and these people pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Yes, it is. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, why do you need a 30-round magazine in your AR-15? It's like, well,
that's why.
That's why.
All right. That is why, because yes, all right. I mean, what the Christmas trees, dude. That's so funny. But all right, man. Well, is there anything else you would like to touch base on before we let you roll, my friend?
No, that was a good conversation. I think we'll leave it at that. Yeah.
I mean, we always have great conversations, but yeah, that's awesome stuff right there. And to the audience, yes, William has many things he needs to attend to, including a family, including his own work. So we do need to allow him to get back to what it is he needs to do. But no worries, he is a bi-weekly host, and you can listen to all his stored up episodes in the playlist and really hear some great stuff. And yes, he will be back very soon. And thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man.
Hey, my pleasure as always.
Ooh, you legends, you, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for once again stopping by tonight. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Feed the algorithm. Keep your head on a swivel.